Welcome to Shaped. I'm Eric White. For the second episode of Shaped, I speak with Brittany King, host of the American Shade show on YouTube and a writer and journalist. She's joined by her mentor and former English professor at Indiana University, Katherine Wills. Let's just get started by having you each introduce yourselves. I guess, Brittany, since I reached out to you directly, let's start with you.
Oh, Lord. This is like the worst part for me because I'm just like, where do I start? So my name is Brittany King. I'm currently based in Indiana. I'm 32. I am a writer. I'm a journalist right now. I am at Indiana University where I'm a writing instructor for first-year college students. I host a YouTube channel show called American Shade, where I platform different point of views in America to talk about polarizing issues from race, social issues, anything under the sun. So yeah, that's what I am right now in this stage of life.
That's a touchy spot to be in right now in 2021, for
Very.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I asked you to do the show, the little series Shaped is going to be all about relationships and mentors and how relationships are behind big things that people do. You know, no one does things alone. And so it's been really cool to see. I was mentioning to Kathy before we started who people select to be on here with them. And you wanted to have Kathy on, who's an old professor of yours and a mentor. So Kathy, if you want to just go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll get into it.
Hey, I'm Kathy Wills. I'm the program director of English at the Columbus Center of Indiana University, Purdue University at Indianapolis. So we're similar to a regional campus from the Indianapolis campus of Indiana and Purdue University. I've been teaching for 25 years, and I teach creative writing, plus also technical and business writing. I've published 7 books and close to 100 peer-reviewed articles, documents. I've traveled in different places, presented my work. This was a second career for me, so I have several prior lives to this, but this is the most recent life that I have. I live in Columbus. I was originally from St. Louis, Missouri, and I lived in San Francisco and Chicago for a while, and finally settled here in Columbus, Indiana. And right now I'm really just enjoying getting back with my students after the COVID that we've had kind of just change with the procedures that we've had and the relationships too with the students that we've had for the last 2 years. So there's been an effect also on relationships.
Yeah,
so I'm glad to get back with students in the classroom.
Yeah, and I guess that's a great segue into your relationship here, because Brittany, you met Kathy as a teacher, correct? Do you want to talk about how you ended up in one of her classes and that moment when you realized that she was someone you wanted to get closer with or get to know better?
Yeah. I met Kathy when I was lost, little girl. No. Well, I kind of was, to be real. That was a particular time in my life. I was, 21? And I was just confused about what I wanted to do with my life. And I had just graduated from a community college that was right across the school from the university I went to when I met Kathy. And I was like, I don't want to go to college. Like, college is not for me. I'm not doing it. But, I was pushed more or less by my family, really my parents to go to college. So I chose to go to Indiana University in Columbus, and I didn't know what I wanted to major in. I was like, I have no idea. I mean, deep down, I love writing, and I've been doing that, since 5. I was writing stories, just my imagination was just so large. And that's just something consistently that I've been good at through my life. I mean, maybe I would get a D in math, an F in science, but an A I would have in English, just because I love to write. So I was like, do I kind of just go for it and try it and just major in English and just see how it goes? Or do I just go for business or something that's like more, that I might get a job after college, like more readily. So I actually decided to major in like media because I was still afraid to major in writing. But then I decided to switch, and Kathy was either like the last class that day or like the last class like that week. I don't know what it was, but I remember I had a class with someone else, a class, and she was the last one. And what I loved about her class was she was frank. Like she was like, this is what I expect. This is the instructions, this is the rules. This not in a dictatorship way, but in a way where she's like, you need to rise to the occasion of what this class is going to offer and what I'm going to offer you. And I was like, okay, let me stand straight in my chair and let me listen to her. And I think after our first larger assignment, we connected on the fact that she was just interested in what I was writing. And then we just built a rapport here and there. I never was one to be like too close with my teachers just because I was like a C student. Like I was like, after this class, that's it. You know, you're just my teacher. But with her, it was different. She was very personable. She humanized the process and she really cared about what I thought and and what I wanted to write. And even though at that point, one would say I wasn't the strongest writer with like grammatical skills, maybe, but she saw something in me. I guess she can explain that, but I could feel that she cared a lot about me and that she saw something in me. I could just feel that kind of instantly during that first year. So.
Does that track with your memory, Kathy, of how things went?
Much better than my memory, but yes, it tracks very well.
She's like, I don't remember at all at class. I don't even know her now. I'm kidding.
Yes, it does. And I think most of what Brittany said is true. And I think probably most students would say that or give me the avals that say that I care about them, that I treat them individually. I see something in their writing, and I'm going to use this word jargon from this jargon word from our field, her voice. But I really did hear her voice, and we had many discussions about this. But I think going beyond that, I don't mentor or work with students really much beyond the classroom. I mean, there's maybe 10% that we develop the rapport. And that was Brittany, because there was something that I felt was very important to me to make sure is heard to the larger world. Mm. So I wanted to see if she wanted to take this further, if she wanted to do the work, if she was sincere and committed and had the grit to go forward, I would be willing to invest myself in her growth. And that's kind of where I make the decision, okay, I'm going to mentor. So I would say, yes, her experience is accurate, but I did see something more than, the care. I did care for all the students, but I did see something more in her that I wanted to highlight, to bring out.
Oh, I love that. And your growth, Brittany, is something I definitely want to talk about. And getting into your writings, it seems like you've gone through a personal evolution with how you think about thoughts or different ideas in the world, and your ability to take from many different places and see the value in many different angles. But one of the things that just occurred to me, and something that's come up before in this podcast, is the birth of a mentorship. How do you guys, who has more responsibility in creating a mentorship relationship? Because I know from my personal experience, I've gone through most of my life feeling as though I haven't had a mentor. And it was really once I started opening myself up to mentorships in places that I maybe wasn't looking at it that way, I started to see that I do actually have mentors. And I wonder, from both of your experience, who who has the responsibility to establish that relationship? Is there a responsibility, or is it something that kind of just blossoms naturally?
I There's two parts to that question. I think it's like, one, I think that it has to be authentic, obviously. But as someone that's a writing instructor now, I would say I think it's on the students a little bit more, because a teacher can't make a student want to connect with them. Like, it's too overbearing, and it's like, what, like, chill, dude, like, you're just my professor. But if the student is like, constantly asking questions, asking for information, advice, that's kind of where the rapport starts, and the mentorship can, organically blossom, versus, a teacher being like, come under my wing, and then you're like forcefully making them like be in. It's like, no, I think it more so has to come from the student, open and willing to take the advice and information for the teacher to give. That's what I think.
I would agree with you. And I agree. I think that it's the student in some ways either implicitly or explicitly requests it. And I think at the point where I saw even more of a mentorship relationship growing is where one of us, and I think it was you, actually said the word, "So you're going to be my mentor." And I said, "Oh, she said it. So maybe I was putting out the signs, because this is how we know how to communicate subtly. So I'm not going to say, 'Oh, I want to be your mentor, Brittany. I'm going to do this.' No, that doesn't happen. But I work with her, and then she goes, 'Oh, so maybe you're like a mentor to me.' And I go, 'Well, yeah, and maybe we can work on something together.' So it's a very subtle, not subtle kind of experience where we're both looking for something, but nobody's going to put it out there. But when somebody drops the word mentor, then at least I feel free to go ahead. Now, there might be different instructors and different people who say, 'Oh, you're so brilliant, I want to work with you. We need to write a paper together.' But that's not my style. And I think in our relationship, it was, my style in general is to let the students kind of perceive the subtlety or the nuance and then request, because I want them to ask. I want them to take the initiative. And I think in some ways it's less pressure on me, less responsibility.
It's kind of like a filter in a way, like not a filter that you're imposing, but just you're letting the filter kind of occur naturally, and you're letting what comes to you come, not forcing it.
Yes, not forcing it, but also not being totally closed off to it, putting out the nuanced belief, hey, we're really getting along, or this is working well, or we get each other, or I understand what you're saying totally. And then they say, "Oh, yeah, you're mentoring me." I go, "Yeah, okay, where do we take this next?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and where does it go next? Because I think one of the things that was a hiccup or causing me to not see the mentors in my life that maybe existed was I had this idea of mentorship as almost like an old school apprenticeship, where you're like learning to be a blacksmith, and this person is teaching you everything. It's like this person is giving me all the information I need to do the thing I want to do. But that's not necessarily the case, I don't think, for all mentorships. It can just be, the people I've talked to, maybe it's just someone you reach out to when times are tough, a spiritual guide, something like that. How did your mentorship evolve? Like, what were the things that kept you looking at the relationship in that way?
There was like a pivotal moment, and that where I could trust Kathy. And when I thought like I was right in a situation, and then I trusted her, and I'm like, oh, she's right. And I don't know if you said these exact words. I know I've said this to you before and we laugh about it, but there was one essay or a paper that I was writing, editing. And she'd be like, "Okay, edit more. You can like push yourself more. You can do better, whatever." And then finally I'm like, "Okay, this edit is like perfect. Like there's just no way. There's no way." And she was like, "You can do better." No, it's not like straight up, like, this is not as good as you can do. Like, this isn't good enough for what you can do. And I was so like, at first I'm like, okay, all right. And then when I leave, I'm like, mumbling under my breath, respectfully. But I was just like, what else could I say? But when I pushed, it was way better. And that push really broke something inside me that I'm like, wow, there's a whole world of prose in me that I just kind of unlocked. I mean, I'm not there, but she just like broke something in me in a good way to show like, you thought your potential's here. I see it here. And you gotta break through this wall. But she wasn't going to do it for me. She wasn't like, well, if you do this and line here and edit this and give some imagery, she was like, you can do it. Just do another round of edits. You can do it. And then when I did it, I was like, wow. And I don't know if it was like right after that, I was like, you're my mentor. It probably was. But that's when I knew, I could trust her. She would give me the most honest advice because she wanted the best for me. So that's why I'm like, okay, this person has to be my mentor. And not just like that I'm getting something like, oh, I'm just gonna be a good writer. I just felt like I was just becoming like more confident in myself. Like just that being hesitant to even major in writing, that was not existent. Like I was just like, okay, let's keep going. Like I was excited after that point. So
is that, Kathy, whenever before we started recording, you were mentioning how you feel as though you're a mentor to several people, not just Brittany, that this is kind of a role that you have taken on in the lives of other people. How do these different relationships compare to each other? And like, how do they, I guess my question is, how do they continue to grow respecting the individual person's abilities and preferences in the relationship? Like, how do these things compare to each other? Like Brittany to another mentee.
I think at some point, and actually my notes, some of my keywords are trust. And so once there's a trust established, and it's different with different people and at different times, then you feel you can go ahead, and I feel I can push without getting a bad review at the end of the month, or she's too pushy, or she's too hard, or so there's an understanding of trusting myself, and also I trust Brittany that she has the grit and the persistence and the toughness. And I think all of my mentees in my mentee relationships show to me a kind of persistence and grit and toughness. And I don't have to do a lot of emotional massaging for them. And some students need a lot of emotional massaging. I'm not going to give it, but there are mentors that work that way. But I work with the ones that are like tough it out. You're going to do it. I'm not going to write it for you. You got a voice in you and you find it. And if you don't want it, that's cool. And so that's the persona. That's who I am with my mentees. And it clicks or it doesn't. So we trusted that we were hitting each other emotionally, that we were reaching each other emotionally correctly. That I could push her more than most of my students. I could push her a lot more. And I know she would. I began to believe and understand that she would grit it out and do it because she cared about herself and her writing and her growth. So other relationships I have, I'm working with, I don't want to be, too direct, but I'm working with a lovely, non-traditional, to me, a young man. I mean, he came in, he was very vulnerable, a lot of life issues as a 25-year-old. And he was very open, very vulnerable about his life. And he managed to get through, and he didn't know, where he was going. He had a novel inside himself. He was willing to say that. And I said, okay, then, but he needed to work. He still needs to work, and he's working now. He's got a day job. And I said, okay, so go online and get this online, degree. So I have access to this information as a mentor. Just, you can get your master's, your MFA, and they will take your work to another level. This is, I'm kind of done at the undergraduate level, but you can take it formally within the system. You don't need to, but it will help you in an organized format to get this novel out. And he did go, and I have 2 lovely long letters from him talking about how much I helped him. And I treasure those 2 letters. And he's finishing up his master's. He has his first novel out. And I have the 300 pages sitting in my inbox. He asked me to read them, so I'm going to read them. But, that's that relationship. But there's a kind of vulnerability, I think, that also is that I've experienced. So let's see. I also, not within the academic setting, but I did have exchange students from former Soviet countries with me, a girl for 1 year and a boy for another. And they were also mentees in another context. They weren't writing mentees, but they were also mentees. And again, fortunately, we had just a good rapport, to use the R word. We had a good rapport. I had a good rapport with both of them. And again, it was trust. I was very open with them. And I think maybe because of the unique circumstances, they were scholarship students who kind of gritted it out again and managed to take a battery of maybe 20 tests from the US government to come here and study. And I knew they were real, just people who would make the effort to improve themselves. And they've both done fabulously. And I'm still in contact with them, again, 10 years later. Now they have children, they have families, and we're still communicating, and they're on very different paths. And so it really, there's something that I'm looking for in all mentees. And for me, it's this element of, do you have the persistence? Are you going to tough it out? And I have to say that partly that's what I see myself as. So I wasn't all that privileged. I have many privileges, but I did have to tough it out as a first generation into the university. So I kind of relate to what I see as, correctly or incorrectly, their struggles. And I relate to, I'm going to help you with your struggles, just like I had it. And people maybe did or didn't help me, but I'm going to help you too. But you gotta do the work, and you gotta be authentic, and that's how it works. So that's kind of how my other mentee relationships, and I have some other ones, but right now, especially the young man who just finished his book, I'm so excited about that. And I hope to have a reading with him from his first book with other faculty here from our area. So, and I'm pulling him along to say that, let's do a reading. Let's get your voice out. Let me edit the text. Let's work with this. So.
I love that. That's and awesome. Brittany, you, after Indiana University, you went on to continue your studies, correct? Elsewhere. Is that right?
Yeah, I went to New York University and I majored in journalism, and it was concentrated in cultural reporting and criticism. Obviously, Kathy was involved in that process of just me kind of just bouncing off ideas, like telling her like this program is something I really want to do, and just like getting her advice. And she wrote a recommendation letter for me, and we just talked things through, like what's the end goal? Like what is something I want to accomplish there? What are other things I want to strive to do as I'm, going to NYU? Just a lot of different things. And just talking about how like really the evolution at that point of where I was to like going to NYU, for me, that was really big. Like that was a school that I dreamt of going to like at 17. I mean, I'm like, I'm not going because I have like a 2.0, but whatever. Like, but I was like, I still like, this city is my dream, that college is. And then I finally was there, as a grad student, and I was just like amazed. And she was so proud of me. And I know she was one of the last people that I talked to. Like I had like a whole going away party, and she was there, of course. And I think like I had like our last minute kind of coffee meetup, and I don't know if I cried then. We're not criers, she and I.
Yeah, you
But
sound very tough as nails, both
no,
of
we're
you.
not criers.
we're not criers. But she gave me a cup that I still have, and it said on it, "The struggle is real." And I'm like, the struggle is real. But it pays off when you persist through it. So that's one thing of many things that she taught me was persistence, and persisting through the essay, persisting through the paper, even if you got to cry, persist.
Mm-hmm.
And that type of work ethic got me to NYU. So
one of the things that I have come to admire about you, Brittany, like getting into your work and I first heard of you on the Dark Horse podcast you did with Brett Weinstein, and kind of dove into some of your writings. And this was a time where I was trying to figure out how I thought about things. Like, what do I actually think? You know, what I realized that I don't really have any factual based opinions on things. I've kind of just been regurgitating what I've been fed my whole life. And so one of the things I admire about you was that you were thinking for yourself and speaking about things in ways that maybe weren't going to win you a popularity contest. And so I wonder what role, if any, Kathy played in you getting to that point, because I know you went through your own evolution of something similar maybe. How did that relationship with Kathy help you get there?
Well, starting, as an undergrad with her, really finding my voice. Oh, here's a moment. This is such a moment. I remember this. So the Bluest Eye, that's one of the books that really was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to write. I'm definitely going to be a writer. And Toni Morrison wrote that book. Still one of my favorite people, authors, writers, inspirations of all time. And I remember I was writing a fictional story, and I gave it to Kathy, and I was really proud of it. I'm like, look how good this is. And she's like, yeah. She's like, you sound like Toni Morrison. And I was like, okay, thank you. She's like, that's not good. I'm like, why? She's like, because you sound like Toni Morrison, or you sound like you're trying to be Toni, and only Toni can be Toni. Only you can be you. She's like, she can be an inspiration for you, but you need to find your own voice and be comfortable with that. You can't lean on people that you aspire to be like, in a sense. You have a voice inside you. She's like, don't fall back on someone else. Like, you have a powerful voice. And I didn't even recognize that was what I was doing. But when I looked, I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to sound like this person and not like me. And that's when I really got the foundation, even though it wasn't perfect every time, but like got the foundation of, yeah, this is how I use words. I don't use words in the same way the other authors do. I like to be innovative with language. I like to put adjectives with things that you're kind of like, why would she put that there? But the fact that you asked that's probably the thing that you are like remembering when you go home. That phrase, you're remembering. So I try to do a lot of that, and I just got more confident in that. And I believe that's definitely something that, my director at NYU saw within my essay of how I was just being myself. And I mean, that's actually one thing. My first essay at NYU, I wrote on colorism, which I'm sure we'll backtrack into that later, because that's something. But I wrote about colorism, and I wrote about, and the title was a very polarizing title of America's most unwanted is Black women. And I just dived into colorism, did historical context with pop culture, using Little Kim with like, the historical context of passing and like, light-skinned slaves inside out, like bringing all these worlds together. And I was like, this might be bold, but whatever. And I just remember my director, first off, she was like, which I love, because I'm like, okay, like I'm used to this type of like, rise to the occasion type persona teachers. But she told us like the first day, if you have any grammatical errors, if there's like one missed comma, it's an F. I don't read things that are grammatically incorrect. You guys are not students, you're writers. And I should just be looking at the context of what you're reading or writing and just going off that. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I made sure, like, and I'm pretty sure I like told Kathy this. I'm like, I'm done. I'm packing my bags. I'm kidding. So anyway, I write this essay and she calls me in her office after the class. She's like, I want to talk to you about your essay. I was like, oh, she's going to tell me to go home. Like, just pack up. And she said, like, this is bold. This is profound. And she offered me a writing job at her friend's publishing house. And I was just like, but that boldness was because it started at IU and with Kathy telling me to be bold in your voice. Say what you, not only like be bold in how you write prose, but what you want to say. Like, and if, as long as you can make logical sense of what you're saying, because writing is thinking really, then you should be comfortable with that. So I carried that, and yeah, and it only has shown positive in my life since. So that's where I get kind of like, I said what I said type vibe, because it's really that. I said what I said.
I love that. Kathy, do you remember those moments, and did they leave any impression on you?
Well, yes, I remember those moments, and I remember having a lot of self-doubts, wondering, am I doing the right thing for Brittany? Am I saying be yourself too much? And I've never said this to you. And I'm going, oh no, what did this instructor say? Is she's like, oh no, Kathy Wills never taught her grammar. What's going to come back on me?
Yeah.
And then I just kind of listened to the whole story, and I'm like, oh, what am I listening to here? And then I go, oh, good, it worked out. Have your voice. So sometimes you don't always know. You just hope. But I have the firm belief that you have to get the voice out. And it's not that we don't have a lot of, pretty good grammarians at upper levels of professional life. It's that we don't have voice, and we don't have people that have things to say, or guts, to use that word, to say things. And then sometimes maybe you're wrong and you got to backtrack it. Okay, we're human. That's my favorite. We're human. But if you don't have, if you're repeating what other people say, if you're not saying something original, then that's a bigger problem. We can fix the other elements. So yeah, I remember hearing, I followed along. We talked pretty regularly while she was at NYU as a student, and I've followed her since then in American Shade and other places. But yeah, sometimes I just sit there and go, did I do this correctly? So,
that's hilarious. She's like, she's too much herself.
What did you say?
You're like, she's too comfortable with herself. Like, tone it down.
So this was the thing with teaching. I was like, oh no, did I put her somewhere that maybe she's going to cringe knowing this? So, but you just, push, and it's not, it's not off a cliff. It's really just your emotional comfortability is really what you're pushing. This is not really dangerous. This is not dangerous stuff. It's just push your comfortability levels out and say what you have to say and rephrase it if it doesn't come out right.
Yeah. True. That's so cool to hear the roots of that, because like I said, that's something I definitely admire in you, Brittany, and your work, and have tried to cultivate in myself over these last couple of years. So that's just cool to see where that started originally. Kathy, I wonder, has there, one of the things that's been interesting doing these conversations is hearing how the mentor has affected the mentee, but not almost every time in every conversation, there's been an influence that flows the other direction of mentee onto mentor. And I wonder if there's anything that you've taken from the relationship that has helped you grow.
Definitely. And there's the benefit of having a chronological relationship, 10 years. A lot of things have happened. And I'm also an open person to new experiences. I don't know if Brittany knows this, But I think one of the most significant influences she's had is when she was, correct me, Brittany, if I'm getting the titles wrong, when she was president of Black Lives Matter in Columbus. I went to several events. I heard her voice and the issues outside of an academic life or writing or creative writing that interested her. And again, I was stirred, what mattered to her. And that moved me to actually go up to Indianapolis and take a day-long Black Lives Matter Allies orientation and training. And that's like a key event in my last 10 years. That was a very big thing. It was very similar to what I had done many years prior, let's say as an undergraduate and as a graduate student, but I hadn't done anything for a long time. I was just doing academic work for many years. Let's not get into the length, but with Brittany, it kind of pushed me to, because of her, because my experience with her, let me see what it's like. And that was an eye-opening experience, that 8 hours that I spent up in Indianapolis with Black Lives Matter orientation and training. And I don't think I'm pretty sure I would have never done that had it not been for Brittany. And I think I would have probably been much more rigid and closed to Black Lives Matter as an organization and its intentions had I not known Brittany and then gone through the orientation. So that was a big shift in my thinking and my perspective on politics, on what's going on now, on forms of communication and writing also, but really on a larger view of where is the future. And not all futures, there are multiple futures, but that future, at least where is this future? And it's certainly, as I watched the media, as I saw things progress on TV and discussions, I felt much more involved in my life and much more involved in the world because I had done that. And that's really, comes from Brittany.
Well, I never knew that at all. That's amazing.
That's awesome. I love whenever that's another thing that keeps happening that is so cool is at some point in these conversations, someone always says, I never knew you thought that, or I never knew that was true for you. So that's awesome. What has it been like to see Brittany kind of her thoughts on just race, on anything she touches kind of evolve and grow and become, she's definitely not, what do I want to say? A mainstream kind of opinion holding person. She's definitely got her own wheels turning and her own thoughts that she's not afraid to share. What has that been like to watch that for you?
She's scared. I'm kidding.
An important word that comes up, and I was thinking about this too, an important word that comes up is in my life, watching Brittany has given, and it's kind of a very selfish thing to say, but it's what has it given me? But it has given me more relevance. And I'll say this as, on getting into being an older person, maybe heading towards retirement and, within 10 years or so. The issue of relevance is not a small thing because you tend to kind of step out of main occupations, mainline. There are a lot of politicians too who are older and then the word is just, they're irrelevant or their ideas are irrelevant. And that's very sad to me that anyone would be. But being a part of this has made me feel that I am not irrelevant. It's not, I can be informed, but I can still be irrelevant, but I'm not irrelevant. I make a difference to people. I'm making a difference every day still to people. And, if it were at the point where I didn't have mentees and I didn't get, an opportunity like this or an opportunity to read the letter that came to me from my other student, then I'd say, okay, well, then maybe I'm not, I'm not in the flow of these things anymore. I don't have to be relevant, but I am. And because I am enjoying that. And so it makes me feel relevant. I'm proud of her work. And proud doesn't even get to it, but I'm really proud. I'm happy to see that she is living and actualizing her life. I'm really happy to see that, and that at some level I was a part of that. So relevance, and kind of proud for her, happy for her. She is, I'm still in the community that she grew up in, so her family is still here. When she mentions Columbus in whatever capacity, it makes me feel like, yeah, I've contributed.
I definitely shout you out whenever I can.
What's that?
I definitely,
she does.
I do shout you out. I be tagging her like, this is, yeah.
She does, and she says that, yeah, here's to my, my teacher. Oh, wow, that just makes me feel so good. And, it's maybe relevant, but relevant is one of the words, but, seen, I don't even know what that, I'd have to really think about it, but let's just say relevant, important to people. So let's just leave it there for now and just say, in that larger context of relevant, we are a part of a larger world, and we are going forward, even if we're not, a 20-something or the new millennials or the Zoomers or whatever's next within kind of a media construction. It makes me feel good. Shout out. Wow. Thanks for yay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I know what you mean by that. The word, I don't know if this is even the word you mean, like honored. Like, I just feel like people that do, not to say I'm like at a huge whatever I am, I don't even pay attention to it, but I do think people need to definitely shout out, remember, let people know who was there with them along the way, like the most important, like pivotal moments of their life, why that even could happen. Like, and just not to do that is not in my DNA. So yeah, definitely people that have literally been in my corner, like she has, since 2012, when there was no corner. I didn't even want a corner. I was just like, I'm here because I gotta be. But she made an investment in me, and out of faith, just like, I think there's something in this kid, and I think she got like something to say, and I will help her. And she did help me, and she helped me in a way where she toughened me up, and she made me see like everything you want, you can have it. You have to work for it. Nothing is given to you. And that's what I've taken. So yeah, anytime, like when I got to NYU, I had a long little, like a whole hallelujah that I got in, but she was there. I was like, and my mentor, like I tag her in the big things because I'm like, how can I not? So yeah, definitely. I understand exactly what you're saying. Justified. And I'm glad you feel that way too.
Maybe remembered. I don't know, but
I love that we're writers and we're like, what word?
Yeah, well, you're writers, so you want to really encapsulate it.
Yeah.
Let's make a good diction choice here. What could it be?
I know. Eric is like, just hurry, figure something
Get
out.
the thesaurus out.
We got 10 minutes left, guys.
Yeah, we have one there. But yeah.
The thing that keeps coming to my mind, just like after hearing what you were saying, Kathy and Brittany, is like a professional parenthood almost, where this person is kind of carrying your professional genetic code into the future. And it's like giving you some sort of, relevance, carrying you into the future in a way that you wouldn't be able to just in your own body, in your own, finite timeline. It's like you're putting yourself into the timeline of, further down the timeline, if that makes sense, like a child almost.
I get that. I was a little baby infant of just having energy of wanting to write, loving to write, but I needed the discipline. I think that's what it was. It was like the writing discipline. It's like all of this imagination thoughts. Okay, cool. All right. Now we need structure. Now we need like focus. Now we need this. Now you need to go home and do that, like, and I know that you use the analogy of like a blacksmith, or like you can even say like, the Karate Kid, like wax on, wax off. It was a literal, you got it, but you gotta like push. You have to, and you're gonna push hard. And yeah. So I agree. I agree with what you said, Eric.
Nice. How do you view the relationship now? I mean, obviously there's still, do you guys still stay in touch? Like still,
We don't talk at all. We're not, I'm kidding. No, honest, at this point, we're friends. It's not like we're mentors. She's my mentor. And there's that definite, always that respect level of mentor and mentee. But like I said, I was 21 when I met her and I'm 32. And it's been a consistent we talk. I mean, I don't think we've ever gone like, what? Like, I don't think we've ever really gone like 6 months or like without talking. I can't even imagine that. And when I would come back like from NYU, I would be like, hey, can we get lunch? Hey, can we get coffee or something? So at this point, and she knows my family well too. They know her by name. Oh yeah, Kathy. Yeah, we saw Kathy. So like, it's definitely a mentor and mentee when I need advice. Cause I just like when I first came back to talk to her, I told her about like this deadline I had. And I was like, man, how am I going to do this? It's going to be so, she's like, write it, just write it next. I was like, you're right, write it. But, yeah, to me, it's like it's a friendship, but it's still like, it's a hierarchy. I'm not like, oh yeah, whatever, but I can joke with her. I can, all the things. And yeah, so yeah, friendship, friends.
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be some sort of movement. If the mentor is doing the right thing, there should be a movement of the mentee almost to a peer, right? Like that's the goal, is to get them to be in a place where they no longer need a mentor for the same reasons they needed one earlier. Right, Kathy? Is that fair to say?
I think there are many, many different kinds of relationships, and some might be very specific to a certain skill or a certain time. So they're all different. I think ours has evolved as we've developed. Our lives are tandem still in many ways because we are writers and we understand the writerly life. And we still have a lot of things in common. So we're not talking about undergraduate grammar mechanics, but we're talking about how do we operate within a system, or how do we find the strength inside ourselves to meet a deadline. So so we still have issues that we trust each other to try to at least give a perspective. I don't expect her to follow my advice, and I really don't think I think she just asked for another perspective from me. And if she doesn't follow my advice, I'm not personally threatened by that either. I'm comfortable enough to say, okay, well, she messed up there. So,
she messed up. I'm like, I should have went with what she said. Why did I do this? That's happened.
So, but it has evolved. But I certainly can see relationships where, they're finite. They come and they go and they move on, and they might be short and passionate, or they have a certain specific material goal. But ours is like this ongoing friendship and also a professional, kind of a professional touchstone. And, you use the example of, parenting, and I don't have kids. I don't know if that really is something, and it's a stereotype, but I do put a lot of energy. It's not that people who have children don't. I think they have infinite energy and they put a lot of energy, but I really don't have kids. So there is a tremendous amount of maybe excess energy that I have to just, all right, you're going to do it, go ahead. But I don't really consider them children. I mean, that hasn't but I might put the energy that some kind of stage mom might put in their children or something.
Get out there,
so
Brittany.
Sometimes I do have that stage mom. Go ahead.
Yeah, she's put little bows on me before, and she just put me on the stage, and she's like, twist around your tutu. Yeah, like, oh, why am I wearing this tutu right now? She's like, just wear it. Just kidding.
Just wear it.
But I do want to say,
you know how.
You know how to wear twist. But I want to say this though. Like I said, I'm a writing instructor now, so I'm like instructing students on writing and reading and critical thinking, really, because it's an inquiry portion of it's inquiry. And so and Kathy is why I'm doing this, because I told her, well, she offered, or the opportunity was presented. She told me about it. She's like, is this something you're interested in? And I'm like, nah, I don't know. I don't know, Kathy. I'm like, I don't know. I'm a little, like, I was like, am I too young? Am I ready? Is this a step? She's like, this is going to challenge you a lot. She's like, this is going to really kind of see what you're made of. Like, you're going to see students that you're going to care for. And, you know, in that aspect, you're going to help them. But this is really going to see what you have. And I feel like this fall semester really has, because I was seeing myself as like taking bits and pieces of what Kathy gave me and giving it to them, and adapting my own, you know, my ideas and strategies as well. But being there too, like if they wanted extra help or to talk, or like there were those students that would want, like, can we go on Zoom? And like, I wasn't going to force anything, but I was always there, you know, like the hand was out. No, if you want to, and we can go, but it's up to you. And so just knowing how to be an effective instructor, I definitely took what Kathy gave me for this, because I was like completely green, novice, no idea. But because she believed in me, and like she took so much time, because she's teaching a lot, like 4 classes. This is one class for me. She has like 5 classes. She's a director, department, all this. But she took out a lot of her summer and weeks just to talk to me and make sure, like, okay, your syllabus, your curriculum, these are the books, these are your, and made the transition really pretty much flawless, to where, you know, I've just checked in with her. At first I was like, I'm overwhelmed. She's like, you got this. And now I'm like, okay, I do. And I've enjoyed this process. And, you know, it's dusted off a couple little writing tools, editing eye, like my analytical eye is just a little sharper now, because I've been reading thousands of essays every week. I'm still shaking about it. No, I'm kidding. No, but it's inevitably, it's make like little tweaks of mine, just more sharper. And I've seen that, and I understand what she means by the challenge of it, because it has. But I'm glad I listened to you and didn't listen to me, and did this opportunity, because it's been awesome. So wanted to say that, because I'm like, that's kind of like a big circle moment for this whole thing. So
yeah, I thought you would enjoy that, but it's not for everybody. I understand that, but to have that experience, and I was very impressed by you saying at some point that it's really sharpened my awareness of my writing. That's, you know, I wasn't necessarily that I want you to read 300 first year essays, that was going to be some great experience, but it was how sharp you become and how you begin to see what we call patterns of error in the field, and you begin to click. And that gets back to that discussion, like when you're sitting writing like Toni Morrison, and I say, you're writing like Toni Morrison, it's a revelation to you. It's you know, explosive. And I'm like, oh, every student, you know, comes in and they're writing like Sylvia Plath, or they're writing like Toni Morrison, or they're writing like Hemingway, you know, the undergraduates. And then we have to kind of try to get them into their own voice. And it is great for you, but it's something that you begin to just see in people or on the page. You know, I can see the errors. I can see this is your pattern of error on the page. You don't know how to use commas. This is what you need. And then you can speak very precisely to each individual student, or you can see larger issues of you're trying to incorporate a voice that's not yours because you think that's what it means to be literate, or to be African-American, or to be whatever it is you think you're going towards. So it makes you, when you see so much of it, you just start doing it mechanically. And that's the professionalism of it, is like, I don't have time. I'm not going to complain. I'm just going to do it because I can see it and I can move, because I've got other things to do.
Yeah, definitely have seen the patterns. Yeah.
I love that. Maybe we can just wrap up. We've kind of touched on this indirectly a couple times, but maybe I can get answers from each of you more directly on this specific question. Is just, what sort of recommendations do you have for someone who is seeking a mentor? we've kind of touched on how you two came to this relationship, but I wonder if there's any like universally applicable things someone can do or someone should be doing to put themselves in a position where they can have a mentorship like this.
No one can have it like this, but I'm kidding. I'm trying to actually, yeah. Cheer, calm down. Just kidding. I'm trying to figure out that because like, I don't have a mentorship like this one. I mean, I would say some of my professors at NYU, I still can talk to them and stuff, but it's not like this. I'm just because like I've known them for 2-3 years. Advice from a student's perspective, I would say, if you want a mentor, you got to show yourself open to be a mentee. And what I mean by that is, you can't be like, okay, I want this person to be my mentor, but I just want them to tell me the things that I want to hear. Like, I don't want to actually get, constructive criticism. I don't want to get all the things that's actually going to help mold me. I just want someone there to tell me I'm great. No, that's not a mentor. You can get that from your friend. Like, a mentor is there to tell you the truth. So I think the student has to be open and willing to hear the harsh truth, like tough love. Because I think that's like a fundamental part of a mentor is like this person you trust enough to tell you something that might make you upset, but it's for your benefit. But you trust them because you're like, okay, this is actually making me not uncomfortable, but this is making me, it's challenged me in a way that I didn't think I needed even. Maybe this advice is not even the advice you're seeking. You're like, that's not even what I was asking for. But this person is hovering over you in a different way. And they're like, no, actually, this is what you need to do. This whole thing, that's a distraction, actually. So you got to be open to that and be open to some harsh love, I think. So
that's really good advice. I think that makes me think of myself in college and just as a younger person, thinking that I knew everything and thinking that the advice or the words I was getting from someone older than me was just, they don't know what they're talking about. This is a different time, but I think you're right. That's the value in wisdom passed down, from a mentor, from a parent, from anyone who's been through the things that you're going through. There's always going to be some wisdom in there that you can take for yourself. So,
exactly.
Kathy, do you have anything from the mentor side? Any recommendations for
I'm going to
would-be
introduce some
mentees?
I'm going to introduce some danger words and to be used judiciously. So you have to be you have to be vulnerable, and you have to be able to take risks, whether it's reaching out to people or opening up yourself, but in the same way to be cognizant of not hurting yourself, of not getting in the types of relationships that are serving something in yourself that might be negative. So there's the stereotypical mentor-mentee relationships of graduate students with faculty that get into romantic relationships, and they can be very powerful, but it might be dangerous. So you really have to, I think, be assessing and working that relationship all the time. Is this working? Is this vulnerability appropriate vulnerability for me? Is it what I want? The vulnerability, the willing to take advice. Am I getting the right advice? It's complex. And if something's not working, if it's a mentor-mentee relationship that's not working, you need to let it go. And I think you need to reach out to people that you think might not interest you in some ways. As you said, they're older, or they're not in my field, or this isn't working. We have a mentor program at our campus for faculty, and a lot of times it's cross disciplinary, and they work fabulously sometimes. So It's just be open and be reflective. I mean, I hate to use be this, be that, give these directives. Here we are, declarative statements, be this, be that. But be willing to be vulnerable. And again, my thing was that I'm aware of who I am and that I like gritty, persistent students. So I'm aware of what I can bring, and I'm aware of what I do. And I think you need to have a little bit of self-awareness too. So I think that's important. And be willing to let go.
I would say that too. I think there's patience there too. You have to be patient with the process and not be like latching onto someone and they have no idea. They're like, oh, I didn't even know like your first name, like what's going on.
Yeah.
So that, and I think there's a personality too. I'm not saying like you have to have a complete personality type, but with the patience comes getting to know how maybe this person, from a student standpoint, maybe how this person will be as a mentor, and seeing like, okay, if you kind of match vibe wise, energy wise, and I'm not even saying like this is stuff I was thinking of. I mean, this wasn't stuff I was thinking of, honestly. It just over time, it just happened. And I just realized how she delivered information worked for me. I mean, it worked for me because it matched my personality. So there's a lot of things. I hope this helps people. Hoping it complicated. People are like, I have no idea what to do. But you'll know. I think you'll know. You'll just know if this person is for you. So yeah.
That's great. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you were hoping we would get to in this conversation?
There's just one thing that comes to mind. I mean, after I graduated, the thesis that I wrote was called Decoding the Hierarchy of Black or something. And I used the Bluest Eye to talk about colorism. And so that was my thesis. And then Kathy told me about a conference called the MOLIS Conference, Multi-Ethnic Literature United States. And she's like, you should submit this in here and we could work on an abstract paper. We could work on all this. And she attached her name to it because I needed like, an actual name with it. And she's like, and I will present with you and we can get someone else. So as we're doing this though, like she's learning about colors. This is a term that she wasn't really familiar with. Mm-hmm. So, and she told me like, this is one thing that she's kind of learned. And so we did that after I graduated. I don't know if that was a year after I graduated, but we went to South Carolina. We presented there. And it was an awesome experience. And yeah, so that's one huge memory
that was on my notes here. And if we still have time, I can, and that was part of the testing. She was an undergraduate at the time, and this is really unusual for undergraduates. It's usually a graduate experience, but I trusted her enough to be mature. And she was a non-traditional student. She wasn't 18. She was a little bit older, and she was more mature. And I reached out to her to actually have this academic experience. I see leadership skills in her, and in my mind, I'm seeing her as a potential voice, a beacon to other women and men of color in an academic setting where I think we need to have these voices. So it's not that I need to go to another conference because I've been to enough, but it's that how I'm going to say it, but how is she going to act? Is she going to be professional? And, I don't care if I get embarrassed. I don't care. But how will she act? And we invited another colleague, Madeline Shackelford Washington, who's now at University of Houston. And we had a fabulous session. It was very well attended. It was a fabulous session on colorism. And then I was learning about colorism, and Brittany worked with the Bluest Eye. And I just kind of got into pop imagery of colorism, of going like super white musicians who are like, they're so white, they have blue hair, and they're like pale and bluish, and it's kind of the super white and like the very, very dark, and just looking at how colorism is bounced off of, is kind of a cultural construct and played with. And Madeline looked at Porgy and Bess and operatic lyrics, and it was a fabulous session, very stirring. And it was in Charleston, and we went out and just learned also about that context was fabulous for the work we were doing. So, I mean, these are peak life experiences. I mean, peak moments that we remember, but also these shared, in this case, academic peak life experiences that go beyond it's friendship, but it's work, it's professionalism, it's leadership, it's the whole cultural milieu of the history and being in place and topos. So just really great experiences, and don't be afraid to have those experiences, but also be aware, because it's not danger free, it's not unboundable, it's not uncomfortable, but these are just kind of, if you want to be fully alive, this is what you're going to have to deal with, is yourself.
Yeah.
Not the mentee or the mentor, but is yourself. And it's a risk for me too, because sometimes you don't know. Students, sometimes can be erratic. They get upset, feel threatened sometimes, especially, and an experience like that for an undergraduate might feel very threatening, and it could come back on my professional identity. So it works both ways. But when
I saw all the PhDs and all that, I was like, I don't got a PhD. I was like, what did she set me up for? I'm kidding. But no, great experience. I learned so much from that.
A lot of these relationships on the outside can look like sunshine and roses, but every relationship comes with challenges, right? So what were maybe some of the challenges you faced in your relationship, and how did you overcome those and be here today, years and years later?
I guess like the littlest one would be distance. I mean, just like making an effort to stay connected, like when you're literally miles apart. I think on my end, it was like times where I really thought I was right. And we're stubborn people. So we're stubborn. We don't cry. We wear black. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah, you're both wearing black.
We're both wearing black. Like, so it's like times where I'm like, I'm right. But the thing is I wouldn't keep it in. Like, I would tell her like, okay, so I disagree. And I think that's actually comes with the whole finding your voice. Like, okay, tell me why you disagree. And back in her mind, she's probably like, you're still wrong. But just tell me why, and articulate to me why you think you shouldn't edit this, or why you think this idea that I had is like, tell me why. So I think, those were challenges, but in the end, I mean, that was good, I would say. But it was the challenge of not just being more willing to be like, okay, you could be wrong. But at least I could raise my voice and not raise my voice, but, like bring my ideas to her. And I trusted that she wouldn't just cut ties with me or something. Like, I trusted she wouldn't be like, I'm your mentor. This is it. She's never done that. She's never weaponized her being a mentor on me. I always felt like I could be honest about how I felt respectfully, but I never felt like I had to be silenced ever. So you just said ask for challenges, and I just wrapped it back up into a positive.
Wow. And maybe what you just hit on was maybe part of my need is really not to feel that I can be myself and not be abandoned. And, that does come in most relationships one way or another through your own life or not your own life, but not to feel, if I say something and you think, oh, she's a racist, that you won't abandon me. And maybe you will. I don't know yet. It might be coming, but not to feel, at least as far as we go, because we did have an incident.
We've had moments where you might say something like, you know what, you've stepped over a boundary. We got to talk. Let's go to coffee. Okay. But those moments though, we talk through it. And that's probably, that has a lot to do with how I think now. And that just kind of was in like my moral compass anyway, to always hear someone out And not just being like, well, they said this one thing, so just they're done. Like, no, like, let's talk about it. So yeah, that's something that's only been helpful. But yeah, I remember those moments, but we got through them, so it's all good.